I think what's been tougher is just managing the traditional politics around being soft on crime versus being tough on crime. And right now, because crime rates, sadly except for in certain neighborhoods in Chicago and a few other cities, have been going down in ways that are remarkable and nobody can fully explain. There is less profit in saying I'm going to be tough on crime. But there is always a hesitance on the part of legislators, because very rarely is a politician punished for having been too tough on crime and sentencing. But occasionally, a la Willie Horton. They feel that a vote that can be perceived as lenient might come back to bite them. The good news is that, so far at least, people have stuck with it. And I'm modestly optimistic that we can get something done this year. It won't solve the problem of mass incarceration, because that was a process that took "20, 30 years to get to where we are now, where we account for 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners, so it's going to take some time to reverse. But the legislation that's pending right now provides meaningful reductions in the standards for sentencing around nonviolent drug crimes. It does some very important work in terms of reentry. Diversion programs. It breaks the psychology that we just have to lock people up in order to keep ourselves safe. One last element to this that has been interesting is the opioids crisis that some of you may have read about. Right now, painkillers overdoses of people taking painkillers kills more people than traffic. Accidents. It's a remarkable statistic. There has been this huge spike in painkiller addiction. Which is then leading to heroin addiction, because oftentimes heroin is cheaper than painkillers. And 4 out of 5 people who get addicted to heroin start their addiction with OxyContin or some other painkiller addiction. And unlike crack, it's not just affecting inner-city African American or Latino. Communities. It's widespread. It's pervasive. It's seeping into rural areas. And it's a tragic issue that we are really spending a lot of time focused on. But what's interesting is that the politics of this changes a little bit where when elected officials see kids who are like their kids getting hooked and going through these terrible things. There's been a greater predisposition to think of this as a public health issue rather than a criminal justice and incarceration issue. And I'm just being blunt, that's the truth. But it actually has had an impact in terms of an openness, I think, to re-examining some of our drug laws. Good question. I'm sure your question 8 years ago was really good, too. Alright, I'm going to go boy girl just to make sure this is fair. We monitor these things. Question, I'm Jimmy. I'm also a 1L. I've never asked you a question before. President Obama, okay. Question, so this might not go very well. President Obama, short answer is, no, I don't. The cleavages inside the Democratic Party are not comparable. To what we're seeing in the Republican Party right now. The argument inside the Democratic Party is a little bit more about means, less about ends. If you look at our two Democratic candidates, they believe that everybody should get health care. They believe that every child should get a good education. They believe that climate change is real and that we should do something about it. They believe in equality for the LGBT community. Right? If you go through the list. There's not a huge divergence there. I think that in the Democratic Party, there is a populist impulse that grows out of what I also think has happened for folks who are voting in the Republican primary. This frustration in the wake of the financial crisis and the bottom falling out for people who lost their jobs, or lost their homes. Or lost their pensions, that the world is moving fast, the ground is not firm under their feet. And even before that crisis, wages and incomes were not going up at the same pace as productivity. Corporate profits, and so forth. And so there is a sense the game is rigged. And we have to more fundamentally change that game. That system, whether it's Wall Street, or how Washington operates, or what have you. Some of that impulse is healthy. I think you want people to be asking hard questions about injustice economically and the way that insiders in the political process may not fully represent the interest of everyone. The danger, whether for Democrats or Republicans, is in a closed-loop system where everybody is just listening to the people who agree with them. That you start thinking the way to get to where I want to go is to simply be as uncompromising as possible. And hold the line, and not pay attention or listen to what the other side has to say. And that is sort of a Tea Party mentality. And that anybody who suggests, well, there's another point of view, or there's a whole half of the country that completely disagrees with us that we have to work with, well, then you must be a sellout, or you must be corrupted, or you must be on the take, or what have you. And that is not, I think, useful. It's not say that there isn't corruption. That there isn't compromise, people compromising principles for less than noble means, etc. Those things happen and they should be called out. But a lot of the reason why a lot of Democrats who supported me and still support me got frustrated is because A. Bunch of the country doesn't agree with me or them, and they have votes, too, and they elect members of Congress. And that's how our democracy works. It's not a situation. If you don't get everything you want, it's always because the person you elected sold you out. It may just be because in our system you end up taking half loaves. I could not be prouder of the Affordable Care Act, but it was a messy process. It doesn't have a public option. It's not single payer. If I were designing a system from scratch, I would have designed a more elegant system and a more efficient system. but that's not what was possible in our democracy in the same way that Social Security. When it first started was a meagerly program providing benefits to just a few people and historically cut out for purely racist reasons domestic servants or sharecroppers or what have you. And then over time you kept on improving it. That's how change generally happens. And I think the thing that Democrats have to guard against is going in the direction that the Republicans are much further along on. And that is the sense of we are just going to get our way, and if we don't, then we'll cannibalize our own and then kick them out and try again. And we narrow our viewpoints more and more until finally we stake out positions that are so extreme that they alienate the broad public. I don't see that being where the Democrats go. But it's always something that we have to pay attention to. Question: Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to know how have your views on the Supreme Court nomination process. Changed since you taught constitutional law here at the University of Chicago. President Obama, my views on how it should work hasn't changed. My views on how it currently works obviously are a source of frustration. Look, just to kind of wrap up this Supreme Court conversation. I think it is perfectly acceptable for Republicans to decide that even though Merrick Garland is highly qualified, even though he's indisputably a good and fair judge, even though he's gotten the highest ratings from all the bar, organizations and others that have examined his record, that I just don't agree with him on X, Y. Z, and I'm going to vote against him because I believe in something different on important issues. What's not acceptable is not giving him a vote, not giving him a hearing, not meeting with him. What's not acceptable, I believe, is the increasing use of the filibuster for somebody who's clearly within the mainstream. Or to essentially say that we are going to nullify the ability of a president who is from another party from making an appointment. And we're going to wait to see if maybe we can get a guy from our party to make the appointment. That is where you have a process foul that corrodes the ability of the court to function effectively. If you play out how much of a problem this could end up being if, in fact, Mitch McConnell sticks to not giving a hearing and not giving a vote, and let's say, from their perspective, everything works out great and their nominee. Whoever that might be, wins and takes over the White House, and they, then, make an appointment. The notion that Democrats would then say, oh, well, we'll just go along with that, that is inconceivable. Right? So now the Democrats say, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We'll wait 4 more years to see how the next president comes in, at which point what's most likely then is Mitch McConnell will then eliminate. The filibuster possibility for Supreme Court justices, as it was eliminated for the other judicial appointments. And now it's just a majoritarian exercise inside the Senate. Of who controls the presidency and who controls the Senate. And if different parties control the White House and the Senate during that period of time. you're not going to get any appointments done, which is a disaster for the courts, generally.